Let me tell you this. Don't have a dream that you can make happen by yourself. If you have a dream, you want to have one so big that, listen, if God, that faith has to employ assistance to help it become part of your reality. You want to be in a place where you cause things to happen outside of you that are so great and so tremendous that by the time it's done, you can turn around and say, God did this particular thing. Then you won't have to take credit because you're opening the door now for the next thing to happen in your life. This is kind of what we see here happening here in the text, because God sometimes will put you in a process where you have to go through things to get to where you have to get next. Your adversaries are a great part of your prosperity. They set you up for you to get to where you have to get next. You need somebody to rub you the wrong way. You need somebody to get on your nerve. You need some things to happen to make you reconsider. You need some things to make you have to turn from the easy way of doing things and consider another way to do things. Sometimes you need an interruption in your journey to what you consider is your personal destination, just so you might miss the traffic jam or the accident that's going to deter the rest of your future. God knows how to give you exactly what you need, exactly when you need it, and because he's God, you should thank him for every interruption. You should thank him every time he shows up and say, I did this for you. And every time you find out that he's blessing you, you should then say, God, I thank you for being who you are in my life. This is what happened with David, because when we look at this particular text, we begin to see several things begin to happen. In the Davidic covenant, David is wrapped up around this particular idea, because the promises that Abraham got were attached to becoming a father of many nations. What Moses got is that he was going to take them to a promised land, and surely it would flow with milk and honey. And they had their contemporaries attached to it, which would be Joshua and other people who were attached to it, trying to make it happen. And the Kings and the Chronicles talk about the journeys that took place to make things happen. The oldest book in the Bible is Job, and Job, being the oldest book in the Bible, kind of deals with the historical and scientific idea and evidence of how God created everything. While you look at Genesis all the way to the first 5 books of the Torah are written in the essence by Moses, who gets captured in the middle of a dream and begins to write prophetically what he gets. He's the first prophet that comes out of the line order of all of these, and he understands now the excellence of how God can put things together. Everybody has their purpose. Say that to somebody. Everybody has their purpose. Moses is called in an interesting land on purpose. He's not in Israel. He's just at the tip of Africa. He's at the top there. Some would try to call it basically the Middle East, but they put the Suez Canal somewhere in between there to separate the Middle East from Africa, to remove the context of its historical significance to Africanism back in the 60s. That was done deliberately, but if you understand the picture of it, you'll understand that those early people of the Ethiopian nation who wrote the Ge'ez text, the first 500 years AD, the first 300 years, the majority of all scripture and everything was taught around the Mediterranean. Most of it began from Cyrene, which is considered Libya, then which happens to be the capital of where Alexandria was when the Greeks took it over. Then you got Libya, then you got Egypt, then you got Ethiopia, then you got Jordan over here, then you got Iran here, then you got Israel here, then you got Lebanon here, then you got Turkey here. Everybody is in the little group, but the majority of the people taking it from one place to another were people of color. Somebody say color. Now, I don't want y'all to be messed up over that. I just want you to know where you are, who you are, because it was Tertullian, who was the African lawyer, who was the theologian, who took the script that he took literally from the Septuagint. The Septuagint is the Greek writing of the Old and the New Testament, put it together, wrote it, and translated it into Latin. And then in Latin, they came out of it what is called the Vulgate, which we get this what's called the Apocrypha, took it to Jerome, who was the king of Italy, and made what is called the Bible that the Catholic Church uses today. But he was a black man. Somebody say a black man. I don't want y'all to lose who you are. I need you to know who you are in our dialogue, because see, we are blessed people because we are what? Yeah, and so while we shouting, while we praising God, you need to understand part of your shout, part of your praise is part of who you are. And so as the Bible was written, you look at the context. That's why I spent so much time in my studies over in Ethiopia, because I wanted to learn the essence of the Ge'ez text. And in the Ge'ez text, they won't teach this particularly unless you're at higher level in theological schools. A lot of stuff I got at the University of Chicago and in other realms. But what they teach is that in the Ge'ez text, you don't get a chance to understand the essence of how some creation, because when it's written by the originals, by many of the historic African writers who translated the Bible at that time, they talk about creation. And they take stuff like, in the beginning God created heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness upon the face of the earth, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the water, and God said, let there be light. Now listen to what he said. In the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. Somebody say, it's all created. It's all created. Say it again, it's all created. That's verse 1 in Genesis 1. But in verse 2 it says, and the earth was without form and void. Wait, hold it. If God created it, how did it get without form and void? So they have some dialogue when they talk about it. They talk about the big gap theory. They talk about the fight that happened with the angels that perhaps kicked Satan and the angels down, from Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah 14, where Satan was kicked down, and the fight that took place in heaven and earth that messed up the earth and made the earth a place that was tohu wabohu. The Bible said it was without form and void, which means it was uninhabitable. Nothing could live on it. And once you get through with him talking about that, you get to verse 3, and it says, and God said, let there be light. Wait, hold it. So all of a sudden, God takes something that was uninhabitable, that nobody could live on, and now he makes it something that somebody can live on. And so creation then starts at verse 2, and he kicks it on from that point. Are you understanding it? So creation starts from this particular point. And when you grab the Ge'ez text says it like this. You know, when you look at the King James Version, you look at the American Revised Standard, you look at the New King James. Y'all know I look at old texts on purpose. I look at old texts because they don't contemporize some of the thought. I like to make sure that you get the nitty-gritty, because that is an etymologic form of a word which takes it to the root, but then there's a philological form which is the root of the root, which talks about the origin of where it came from. So it's the original thought. It's what God really thought when he said what God was thinking. When God came as a thought, it was a seed that had something that was attached to it. He said, I want you to get out of here and let you get the whole seed. Because if you got a seed, you can make it all over again. You can't cut a watermelon seed and plant it and get a watermelon out of it. You need the whole seed. Somebody look at you and say, just talk to somebody and say, I gotta have a whole seed. I gotta have. No. Y'all ain't talking to somebody. Just tell somebody, I gotta have a whole seed. Here's the essence now. Here comes the whole thing. And so when the Ge'ez text, and the oldest text known to man, the Ge'ez text, the oldest Christian text, because whether you know it or not, Ethiopia is the oldest Christian nation. Have the oldest Christian writers. Now, in understanding that, and the Ge'ez text talks about creation, what the Ge'ez text basically said, they said that when God decided to make something, this is the way God did it. Now, in the King James Version, they just talk about, and he made the trees, and he made the plants, and he made the birds of the air, the fowl of the air, and the beasts of the field, and the four-legged creatures. Talked about that. But when you look at it in the Ge'ez text, these African writers wrote it like this. They say, when God made creation, what he did was he wanted to make sure that everything was created after his own kind, and that it can reproduce after his own kind. Now, when you look at Genesis 8 and 22, and we repeat that, as long as the earth remaineth, talks about seed time and harvest, and all that stuff. We deal with the secular things of life. But these people, they picked it up in the first chapter and says that when God created, what he did was he took the corn and put the seed on the side of the corn. He put it on the bottom of the potato. He put it inside the apple and the orange. He put it on top of the barley to make sure that everything can create after its own kind. The reason why they said it like that is because they want to make sure you don't miss an opportunity for God being able to bless you, because whatever he called you to be, your seed is showing up as long as you live. Look at your neighbor and say, I got to see some seed out of you. I got to see some. So the whole deal is that there's enough in you to change the generation around you. You can change your classroom. You can change your atmosphere. You can change everything around you. But you got to know who you are.